Hello and welcome to the Guitar Hang Podcast. I'm your host, John Stancourt. Today we're diving into the captivating world of Steve Postell from the Immediate Family. You might recognize Steve from his remarkable journey, which includes collaborations with music legends like David Crosby, Becca Bramlett, Jeff Pevar, Greg Leith, and many others. Steve's musical versatility knows no bounds. His contribution to artists like John Oates, Jennifer Warnes, Kenny Loggins, Eric Anderson, Pure Prairie League, and many others have left an indelible mark. Today we discuss his illustrious career, creative adventures, and his unwavering passion that drives his music. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button below and ring the bell for notifications. And now, let's hang with Steve Postell. Well, as we're hoisting a beverage, I say congratulations to you. Very exciting time. The release. Yeah, long overdue, I suspect.
It's in some ways it feels that way. It's been so many turns, and
Yeah,
what now is a 40-year career.
yeah,
But the last 5, 6 years have been quite a propulsion. Yeah.
yeah. It's very, and you were a guy that you and Waddy both were East Coast guys. I don't know about Cooch if
Well, Cooch, New York.
New
Cooch.
York. So
Oh, yeah. We all played the same clubs, and
okay. So
yeah,
this
the rhythm section is West Coast,
right
and
now.
then we
I think Waddy's Forest Hills. Is that right?
yes.
And where in New York were you in this roughly the same area?
Oh, Manhattan, always.
Oh, okay.
I'm a real New Yorker. Don't tell.
Right.
Don't,
Don't tell
don't,
Waddy that, yeah.
don't tell Whitey that. Yeah.
Yes, so that what a fertile time uh, to be in New York with all the music that was happening. I mean, it was the only way that not. I mean, I was born in '65, so I certainly wasn't in the mix of that. But being an avid fan of reading anything I can lay my hands on about that period of time, to
Oh,
be
being in New York in those years, just like being in LA a little bit later. What New York was unbelievable.
yeah,
Whitey told me he went to see. Um, oh, I mean, just what the stuff we talk about uh, that we saw back and that you could just go see was it's incredible. Starting at 12 years old.
right. And it runs the gamut. So you could see the Rascals, you could and all the mid '60s things, and the British bands that started coming over after the Beatles and the Stones, the British invasion, and then you had all the really amazing that all the stuff that was happening. Like that was the epicenter of
Well, the thing that was one of the things that was great is that it was not so categorized.
right.
So so everything was happening. I mean, yeah, there was that theater, little theater, I think it was in Brooklyn, where Zappa played for like 20 shows in a
Yeah,
row. And
Garrick.
Waddy, he went every time.
Yeah, the Garrick Theater. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And he was like 60, whatever. And yeah, I would go see Duke Ellington, then the next night Doc Watson, then the next night John McLaughlin, and the next night Tim Hardin, and the next night Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee. I mean, it was every weekend was like that. Then BB King, then
Right.
it never stopped. And the other thing that was interesting, I don't ever remember not being able to get a ticket.
Yeah,
Like it was always full, but it wasn't like now. There were no ticket masters.
right.
So so I mean Poco at the Beacon one it was every weekend we went
Right.
from when I was 12 to when I left the city practically.
Right. It's not a
Not to mention that you could play every night once you got to
right.
playing.
Right. So if you're absorbing all those different styles of music and you're gigging and you're writing, perfecting your craft, by the time there's no better training ground by the time that you get into doing session work. or going on the road with these artists, because at that period of time, you're asked to do a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
You might be,
Especially because and it's one of the differences, but the 10-year gap between me and the other guys in the immediate family is that I did a lot of jingles, movie stuff, TV stuff, Broadway shows. So I really had to show up and play whatever style was, you know. I think that, for example, the guys that I work with a lot, it's like when they called Waddy or Danny, they wanted him to play like Waddy,
right.
play like Danny. Leland had more of a thing like me. He did a lot of the gamut and played a lot of the styles, but we had to be chameleons and even fake it when it wasn't our genre, you know.
Right. Yeah, but being steeped in that music, you're even though it was maybe not exactly in your vernacular, you knew what would be necessary for that particular artist.
Yeah.
You could
Or
interpret what they were going for, even if it may not be hardcore jazz stuff. You knew what they were the feeling that they're trying to get.
I could approximate most things. Even the one area that I just decided early on that I wasn't going to master just because I loved it so much and the guys were so great was jazz. Like if
Right.
I'm going to do all this other stuff and classical and this and that, I'll leave that to the guys. But I could, in a session, I
Sure.
could fake a jazz thing,
Yeah.
and had to sometimes.
Yeah, it's like the great story about Tommy Tedesco. He would be asked to play. Hey Tommy, you got banjo for me, or you got bouzouki for me, and he would be able to simulate all these things, and or he would know exactly what it would take, and
Right.
that it always seemed to me the studio guys were kind of like the special forces guys that would come in and maybe see a chart, maybe just hear a demo, and then you coming up with parts that became hooks of the song. I mean, without those integral parts, there wouldn't be the song
Absolutely.
as we know it.
No, no, for sure. I mean that one of the greatest examples is in my band. I mean, if Edge of 17 didn't have that guitar part,
Right,
now, there was a part that was, I think it was on a synth or something like, but the
right.
way he played it, the way he approached it, um, made the song.
Yeah, there's so much dynamics in the timbre of the playing, and it's a relentless part. I can't imagine gigging with Stevie night after night, especially as low as Waddy plays his Les Paul. I just that would be a very
No,
rigorous.
I've tried. He said it takes him 2 weeks before a tour to get his right hand ready to play that one song because
Right.
she also now starts it. I think that they do a whole 3 4 minutes before she like getting ready because everyone. I've tried it. I've played along. It is what sounds like a simple part, and for those of you who don't know, it's just an eighth note
Yeah,
uh, going up and down stroke, but relentless with no accents for sometimes 10 minutes.
right,
That try that.
right. The thing that I thought was incredible about you guys, similar to the Wrecking Crew in the sense of very sought after players, but it's one thing to create those amazing, legendary legacy albums, but then to go out on the road to be able to do both and navigate those and working so well with the personalities, the singer songwriters, and that that it's a very amazing feat to be able to juggle both worlds.
Well, they are different, and I think one thing that we share in that band is, and a lot of the musicians I work with is I love playing live, everything about it,
Yeah,
and I love being in the studio. I love this, especially nowadays when I have
yeah,
what used to cost $1 million. I have back there, in a computer,
right.
and it's a blast. I mean, I downloaded a new guitar software last night. It's like, wow, this thing sounds great, and But if I had to just do one thing, I'd play live.
Right.
For me, that's what I would do.
Yeah. What would have been going back into the mid to late '60s? What would you consider your first major tour that you were on?
Well, the first tour I was on was a Broadway show, was Man of La Mancha.
Oh man, okay.
So the first few tours I did, I got into through a kind of convoluted, almost happenstance way. I got into playing Broadway shows, and right away I got a national tour. I
Yeah.
actually toured with Ed Ames was the lead in that one. The next Man of La Mancha I did was John Raitt, Bonnie's dad.
Oh wow. Okay. So
So I did.
Ed Ames was uh, what was the TV show that he was on?
Yeah, he's most. I mean, it's a strange thing to be most famous for, but for the Johnny Carson show when he threw the
Yeah,
hatchet.
that's exactly what I was thinking, Steve,
Yeah,
is that I can see Ed Ames throwing a hatchet, but I can't remember the name of the show.
it was the Tonight Show.
No, but I mean the show that Ed was on. Wasn't
Oh,
he
he
on?
was on Davy Crockett, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, or something like, yeah, that's a,
It was one of those ones. Yeah,
yeah.
right.
So Man of La Mancha, okay. Well, I
So
mean
that
that speaks to your reading chops for sure.
I had the tools, which is that you had to read, you had to be able to play sort of semi flamenco guitar, and you had to look good enough to be on stage for the songs that I did on stage.
Right. Right.
So I was like a great fit for that. And I did four tours of that,
Okay.
and that came out of nowhere. Like, I actually left music school to go do that tour.
Yeah.
So those were the first tours I did. And actually I did a lot, and then others. I just kept getting called for uh for shows
Uh,
until at the end of Evita, which was a 2-year run on Broadway. I just was like, I gotta, if I don't stop doing this, I'll get trapped in it.
right.
And I started turning down shows. And then you turn down three, and all the other guys who want your job say, don't call him anymore. I'll do it.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, the transition to going from to Manhattan to LA, you came right at the time that the whole singer-songwriter thing was coming up, because that really wasn't something that was very common. The famous singers of the day were not songwriters per se. So Carol and James and Jackson and Warren and those guys. Um, it was a very fertile time to be
Oh, I
coming.
wasn't here. I wasn't here then. That's when the guys came. Yeah, that's when Waddy showed up, and then Danny. That's why they're so they came here at exactly the right time.
Right.
And so it was a big influence on me and on a lot of my friends in New York. But
Yeah.
but that scene was out here.
Okay. What year did you make it out
I
to L?
didn't I didn't move here until 2004. I started working out here in the late 80s.
Okay.
And then for the next 15 years, I'd, do various projects and fly out. But
Right.
I didn't actually make the commitment.
Right. As far as what you're doing now, you're producing folks, you're doing studio work. I would guess that would include jingles as well as.
I don't, there's not, there isn't, there's much jingles now. I mean, I think I did one last year. I'm not pursuing it. And also, everybody's got their own, there's a few big jingle houses, but everyone figured out, oh, I'll just do it in my studio.
Right.
Uh, so I do one a year. I mean, it's not something that, but I produce people. I do film stuff. I just finished a documentary film score that I wrote with John Densmore and a friend of mine, Mark Orman. We just finished that in here, and then we're going to turn it into a record because it came out really well.
Yeah. As far as your influences, that would be, I would guess they would have to be all over the map in terms of jazz, classical, rock, blues, but any particular players that are the seminal foundations for your guitar style?
Well, again, there's, because I came up through the classical thing, um, there's the classical guys. I mean, the first concert I ever saw in my life was Segovia when I was 5.
Yeah.
Um, so then, Christopher Parkening and Julian Bream and John Williams and all those guys, and uh, then there was the guys who fingerpicked James Taylor and Jackson and guys I've since worked with, but and Crosby, who I learned how to, all his parts. So there was those guys. Then there were the real instrumental guys like Leo Kottke and so on, and I big influence, and then uh, and then on electric guitar, of course, there was. I mean, the Beatles were the first influence on everything,
Sure.
for me. They influenced how to sing, how to play, how to write, how to arrange, how to be in a band, the whole thing. But Hendrix, if you were coming up when Hendrix came out, which I was, and got his first record, that was mind blowing. It just changed. It changed what was possible and what you thought about the guitar. At least for me, it certainly did. In terms of as time has gone on, I have my favorite guitar players like Robin Ford is who's also been a friend for many, many years, but also, if I could say, well, let me play everything that this guy can play, I'd pick him.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Amazing player. And I think that he would probably have a lot of the same influence as well, being a contemporary,
I think, one time we did a session, this was back when I had the studio in Burbank with Steve Ferroni, and I helped him load his guitars back into his car, and he had one of those CD changers.
Oh yeah.
And I was spying on what he was putting there. I remember he put in uh, Kind of Blue. He put
Yeah.
in Miles Davis. He put in a Joni Mitchell thing. He put in like it was all great
Right.
stuff that I would have put in a car to listen to on the way home. Um, but and that was part of the thing of growing up in that time. There was not. It just wasn't so genre specific. Even FM radio was pretty had a pretty wide variety of styles. and and the stations were so great in New York. I mean, the jazz station was a WRVR, I think.
Mhm.
Incredible. It wasn't smooth jazz. It was like fantastic to listen to, and then WBAI was the R&B station. It was unbelievable. I think it was BAI. Just one the Temptations into Stevie Wonder into Martha Reeves, and I mean, and then the FM, the great FM station. So there was, yeah, when FM came along, there wasn't a lot of bad music on the radio
Right. Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
in that era.
Yeah. It was easy to go. You might hear Earth, Wind, and Fire, and then you might hear a Miles Davis track, and then you might hear uh, Motown, then you might hear a Zappa, like something from Overnight Sensation, or it was just a wide mix of things that you're likely to encounter, which was a refresh because I think DJs at that time, were playing stuff based on what they liked rather than the
Well,
format.
most of the big DJs, not all of them, but they made their song lists. They made their playlists.
Yeah.
They didn't have, and there were program directors. A cousin of mine worked at RVR. Oh no, he picked his own stuff. That's right. They would make suggestions, but he played what he wanted.
Yeah. Were you somebody that, as a kid, were you already starting to get into recording simultaneously? Primitive recording, albeit,
Well, very primitive because we
but
didn't
I mean,
have.
you're at least you had your mind on the idea of, wow, this would be kind of cool to be able to record my own stuff. And
Well, I had one of the first cassette players that you could record onto, and then my dad for my 16th birthday got me a Sony reel-to-reel that had sound on sound.
okay,
And sound on sound meant you could record a second track.
Right.
So it was two-track recording. So that was, that opened up that I could play a guitar part and then sing. That was amazing, or play a solo. And then when I graduated, he got me, he was always very supportive. He got me the TAC four-track reel to reel.
Right.
And that, and then I went to the A track, and then I went to the ADAT. So, like, I always wanted to record. So whenever something came out, um, it was time to move to that format.
Yeah.
And of course, in the studios, when we went in the studios, it was all, 2-inch, 24 track. Uh,
Yeah. It seems like if you if you came up as a musician that had aspirations of engineering their own recordings or for somebody else, and you came up absorbing the Beatles, the Beach Boys, uh, it's just some of the music that was in that period of time. There's so many interesting things to pick up on. George Martin productions, or what Brian Wilson was doing. Any of these great producers, even later with Roy Thomas Baker, with some of the Queen stuff. It's such a fertile time to be able to pick up and learn all the different. You don't in today's recordings. I don't hear the rich tapestry of all the different colors of different interesting, especially on the Beach Boys stuff. You would hear a track that might have banjo with harpsichord with tic tac piano and a Fender 6 bass or something, and it was just, but all together it sounded amazing. And you would have to have such a ability to forecast in your mind way down the road what it was going to sound like. So for yourself, coming up with those amazing recordings, that had to color the way that you would be able
well,
to
it, it
record it.
certainly it certainly did. It's funny. I was driving yesterday, and Papa Was Rolling Stone came on, and one of the interesting things about my ears is that every year it seems I hear more than I heard the year before. So stuff that I've heard a million times like that, I
Right.
now hear with a new, kaleidoscope of textures and sonic colors. And I was just listening to that, I was just amazed at the quality, the arrangement, the ideas, it was incredible. But I don't think I thought about it that much at first. But I think it all came in. That's what was coming into your ears. And then by the time I got the four track and the eight track and started to do it myself, experimenting, then I started listening in that way, like what are they doing? But I mean, it's interesting now because there's anything is possible, right? And now there's these stupid, I hate to say it, I get ads on Facebook. You don't have to know chords anymore. Get this program and we'll do the chords for you. It's just like makes me crazy. Um, but there are people doing very interesting production stuff because you can, uh, and because there's so many possibilities. What I miss is the sort of, for want of a better word, the delicacy of the choices, the refinement of the choices. Now it's like you can throw the kitchen sink at it and you can do all these fancy things, and I hear a lot of cool sounds, but that's a different level than the
Right.
level of arrangement that's on a Motown track or that's on a Beach Boys track or you know.
Right. Yeah, there is something to be said for the choices that a group of people are making on the floor in the room recording together.
Well,
Which,
that's a whole different thing. That's a skill that is probably dying off,
yeah,
is my guess. So
yeah,
that's what we do, like with well, not just immediate family, but what I love to do is
right,
get the musicians who are good enough and who understand the concept. Everyone
right.
says, "Wow, you guys have three guitars in the immediate family. How do you do it?" Well,
Oh, yeah,
we've spent our lifetimes listening to what is the thing I can play on this that might make it a better piece of music.
exactly. And it's three players that might have some similarities, but they love and respect each other, and they're always listening what fits, who's going
Yeah,
to take it's you guys are masters at serving the song.
that's the only thing that matters,
Yeah.
and that's how we come up with who, it sort of happens organically who plays what, and I mean, occasionally I'll be mixing some, and is that me or Waddy? Occasionally, I'm not. We have certain things that are a little bit similar, but essentially, Waddy, Danny, and I play in our own realm of the spectrum, and it fits very well together.
Did you play as kids or teenagers, I should say, prior to, or I know there's a difference in age, so I'm not sure exactly how you know, when your first experience with those guys.
Well, I didn't meet those guys till I came out to LA.
Okay. I didn't know if prior to coming to LA, if there was any exposure to them.
I knew
Right.
them all and followed them all, and checked the liner notes and
Yeah.
knew exactly what they played on, all of them.
Yeah.
But I didn't meet them till I came out here.
Would uh for someone that's unaware of the three of your playing, what how would you is it a difficult thing to put your finger on, like the differences, or maybe
I
the
don't think so. I mean, some of it's subtle, but and probably hard to articulate. But as a broad stroke, so Danny, who plays primarily tellies and strats kind of guitars, and that kind of guitar, Jaguar, is a relentless rhythm player. Like his his sort of mode of inspiration is I'd say, James Brown or these great blues parts. So he just always a rhythm part
Mhm.
with that cuts up the time in a certain way, and in that old school, that rhythm guitar player thing.
Right.
And he's just one of the best at that uh, around, and has been for 50 years. Waddy is a master at finding linear lines that become absolutely signatures to the song, that once he finds it, without it, now he's a great power rhythm player, and he does certain things like that seem simple, like that, you know Stevie Nicks part, or even just his eighth note downstroke stuff, which has a feel to it that I don't think a lot of people can match, which is, and he was in the 80s, he was called for that a lot. Hey, Waddy, can you come do eighth notes on this track?
Yeah.
Um, but he also has a linear
Yeah.
th ear where there's a line that fits exactly where it's supposed to go. Um, and I'd say I'm more of a textural player in the sense of, which works well for this band because we don't have a keyboard player. I'm actually doing, I think, a lot what a keyboard player might do.
Yeah.
I use more colors, I use more pedals. Um, so I kind of have this blending of those two guys, and I'd say that's the in a short answer, how the three guitars fit together. And I also play different guitars. So Waddy plays pretty much primarily Les Pauls. Danny's got that single coil thing going. And what I found ultimately that fits in there is the PRS stuff. Fits beautifully with that. I also have a G&L with humbuckers that's called a Skyhawk, and some of their, but I found some sounds that are sort of somewhere in between their two sounds.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing to be able to have something that the sum of the parts is, serving the song and everybody bringing their distinct thing, and of course with Leland and Russ as a rhythm section, that's a very formidable
Well,
band.
we don't even have to play, really.
That's right. Uh, I'm hoping that folks that watch this will immediately go and check out the the movie, but for those that haven't quite seen it, without giving divulging too much, what exactly can we expect from the film in terms of the overview?
The overview really, which I think they did a beautiful job. Denny Tedesco, who directed it, and him with the editors and with the team, but his vision became, I mean, the impetus of the thing was, oh, these guys, particularly those guys, were the next wave after the Wrecking Crew, and I made the Wrecking Crew movie. The next thing that happened really was these guys. So it was a great transition for him. And then him finding out that, and they have a band now. They're still, not only are they still playing music, they're in a band now together. So that was a great sort of sparking point to make this film. But the film, to me, is really sort of about a couple things. It's about musical companionship. That's what's our name of the band, Immediate Family, but the family then is extended in the movie. So these interviews, which are pretty amazing. I mean, everybody we asked said yes, which we didn't expect at all. We were hoping four of them might say yes. So, Stevie Nicks and Carole King and Linda Ronstadt and Keith Richards and Neil Young, Don Henley, James Taylor, Jackson Browne, David Crosby. Everybody said, matter of fact, so many people said yes. A couple of people didn't even get in there, unfortunately. Um, but the stories are about the music, but it's about the era, and it's about, I think what it's really about more than anything is how musicians interact in their musically and in their friendships, in their life, in the lifestyles and vision, and it's sort of a love story to me to what is a little bit of a dying era in that people don't get to do what we got to do.
Right.
We all get to hang out all the time and play in each other's houses and be on sessions together and be on the road together, and it was like a big slumber party,
Right.
and things are just way colder and more cutthroat, and that camaraderie that we still have, which is why we have this band and we have with our other friends from is was a really beautiful thing, and I think they really captured that. And I mean, Danny and James Taylor met when they were teenagers. They didn't even know they played music. They used to hang out together
Yeah.
on Martha's Vineyard, and all these friendships that occurred, and many of them are still happening. And when we're hanging out in the studio and Jackson and Danny are in here, and they're kind of bickering about some musical, not bickering, but like back and forth. It's like, wow, these guys have been doing this for 50 years together.
Right.
They've and Waddy and Jackson who produced the Warren Zevon stuff. These are great solid relationships that center around music, but also center around vision and a worldview, and it's amazing how simpatico, whether it's me talking Jackson or me and Crosby or Waddy, we all share an awful lot of a worldview,
Yeah.
and that's what the movie's about, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely, from what I've seen, preview wise and just seeing some other online interviews, it definitely seems like it's a very apt title, The Immediate Family, because it does seem like you guys are brothers. That there's a, a connection there that supersedes just the music part of it. And it seems like your empathy for one another as human beings and your philosophical leanings and that sort of thing are all
Yeah,
kind of tuned,
yeah,
which is a amazing thing to have, because when you're coming up as a kid, the idea of having such an amazing career like that is you just want to be part of the team. You just want to be included. You don't.
that that's what's so great for me is that when I would go see these guys play with, particularly with James Taylor, Jackson Brown, when I was 16 or whatever, um, the fantasy was to be on that stage. I didn't care whether I was in the James Taylor role or with those guys. I just wanted to. It wasn't about, we're gonna make a lot of money and we're gonna be famous. I just wanted to be on that bus. When Running on Empty came out, I saw those pictures like, I want to be on that bus.
Right. Yeah, I mean that the stories from the all of that that period of time. It does seem like that group that you're referring to was maybe not unlike what folks experienced in the Roaring Twenties. It was a period of time. It was like this golden, amazing period that very fortunate to have encountered. To
I mean, it's not a fantasy. It really was, and having been able to tag along and hear the stories and sit with them and really, it must have been unbelievable.
right,
And I had a lot of great. I mean, New York was amazing for me in a different way, and that was amazing. But these guys got what they got to do was a was it will never ever be recreated in history. I don't see it.
yeah, especially since things are kind of moving away from the communal creating together and being on a team. Um, and that's what it felt like. It felt like there's a bit of a gang edge to it, like a bunch of, but a family, but also, a sports team, everybody pulling for the common good of you know, the project. And it's very easy now to just get into just dollars and the selling and the streams and that kind of stuff and doing stuff on your own with Pro Tools or Logic and a small thing without a lot of outside collaborators. But I've seen some of your photos on Facebook, and it's kind of like a who's who of amazing players that I know you're collaborating with. So it's still alive to see James Raymond in there and Lee and all those guys. So it's a you're still in the mix. You're still doing it. Still making great music. That's a very beautiful thing to have.
I That's what it's all about. That's why I live here, so that I'm close to that and I can call different people for different things, and it's always changing. Um, and it's uh, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's a beautiful community. Everyone knows each other. Everybody, there's different interactions that overlap, and I feel very very fortunate because it's not something that, I'm doing a show in a couple weeks. I'm a special guest for an artist named Bruce Coburn, who's one of my favorite songwriters and guitar players.
Wonderful.
And
Yeah.
and I was it's at a beautiful theater called Libero Theater. We're both playing solo, and then we'll play together a little bit at the end. And I went, oh, Jackson was on a Coburn record. I know he was, and I called him up, and hey, I'm opening for, I'm playing. He goes, oh, I'm going to that show. I'm already, yeah, that's on my calendar. That's that's just a special thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wonderful when folks are still supporting each other and going out and seeing shows and staying connected, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yep, yeah.
Part of.
And we do, and we still go see our friends play and support, and absolutely,
Yeah, and
yeah.
that's the stories that I would read about those days when people would gather at Doug Weston, the Troubadour, and all those different places and just hang out. It was like the gig itself was amazing, but it was like the after hang, just working on, check this out. I got this new song. It's a lot of cross pollination. So it was, I guess, only inevitable to have for lack of a better word, a West Coast sound because a lot of the folks were sharing ideas and same sensibilities and
Yeah, and then on the East Coast we had like Bleecker Street. So
yeah, yeah,
Bleecker Street had I'm not exaggerating. Every fourth establishment was had live music all the way down for this like 4 block, 5 block. So
Yeah.
you'd go and we played there. Everybody played there 3, 4 nights a week, and then you'd walk out on your break, and all your friends were at the other places, and then afterwards you go jam, and this went on until 4 in the morning every night. You
Yeah.
know, so it was different, but still had this. It was just fantastic. It was
Yeah.
super fun. I had incredible. I one night I'm sitting playing at a place called the Red Lion,
Mhm.
and a little trio I had there, and the place is packed. And I looked there, and there's Rick Danko sitting there alone. He's sitting alone, and I'm like, "Hey, Rick, you want to play?" "Yeah, sure." So we played band songs for like an hour with Rick, you
Yeah.
know, and then hung out afterwards. And that's over. Like that's not going to happen again.
Right.
And so I feel very fortunate. I feel honestly a little sad for, I teach a little bit and do workshops and mentoring and
Mhm.
try to find ways to give young people some of that feeling of what we had, but they're never going to have that.
Yeah. What's interesting is the the names that you were, if we were to go on and make a list of some of these folks, it would read like characters from a book because they're all that music coming out of that period of time, whether it's the band or Joni Mitchell, Carole King, Jackson Brown, all those different musicians from that period of time were such colorful human beings that
Well, that's another thing. I mean, that the other thing is that because there was no, well, here's what this is just a theory. My theory is that it was a viable thing to do. So interesting people and smart people who were creative was that, well, I'm going to do this.
right,
So whereas it's not a viable thing to do anymore. So if you're an interesting, smart person, you're going to go into software development or gaming or some other thing. It's like to God, be a musician, you got to be kidding me. But then it was very viable, and if you were a little bit, rebellious, you didn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer, and you were creative,
right,
being an artist, particularly a musician, was not that unreasonable.
right.
So the thing is that all these people that I know, every time I went to Crosby's house, he gave me a book.
Yeah,
Hey, you got to read this one. Same with Jackson. Have you read this? Like everybody read, everybody watched old movies,
yeah.
went to museums,
And
you
I
know.
think that's what that is why those are timeless, really brilliant songs that you wouldn't be out of line comparing them with great literature because it's coming from a place of higher learning from art, literature,
Yeah, it's exactly.
architecture. They were people were excited and interested in other things and different philosophies and different schools of thought. And yeah, so it's no wonder why that was such a rich period of time.
There were a lot of factors, and there were economic factors and political factors, but one of them is that without all this social media crap,
Right.
you had an interest, like a curious mind, especially like for me growing up in New York City. I mean, I it was all interesting to me. Film was interesting to me, and sculpture was interesting, and painting and dance. I saw Nureyev, I saw Alvin Ailey, I saw you name it. It was there for the taking, and there was what other entertainment was I was going to entertain myself, and even drug taking, since the drugs were different. I think you would, yeah, you might take drugs, but then you went and did something. You did something. You didn't go to a rave.
Right.
Like, let's take some mescaline and go to the museum. They've got a Van Gogh exhibit. Let's take some mescaline and go to see Van Gogh. You
Right.
know, not promoting drug use, but even that, there, you know, so so it's not surprising to me that uh, the backdrop from which we drew our inspiration and influences when you came up in those times was extremely rich.
Right. Yeah, that's it's interesting that you say that because it seems like if anything, it's because of social media, because of video games, people are withdrawing a bit and just getting into this not necessarily a helpful alternative reality. You know, there, like you said, you were not to advocate drug taking, but you're actually out there doing things that are trying to expand your mind. You know, through going to see art or hear other styles of music, whether it be classical or jazz or whatever, or uh, it seems like that. I think that's why the music um, today, to me, feels and sounds a bit incestuous or something, or it feels like it's it's not taking in all the richness that that's out there. It seems very synthesized and homogenous.
Very homogeneous, and it also has a, if you look at like that, there's a this range of palettes,
Yeah,
a palette of colors, and we were looking at all these, and all the music has like this is the palette.
yeah,
It's all within here, even melodically, harmonically, rhythmically, sonically. It's all here, and we were like the sky's the limit, and looking for uh, I think I think a deeper meaning. I think the relationship people had with it was different.
right.
I know that that young people do not have the same relationship. It's not that they don't, know all the words to Taylor Swift songs and, but the relationship with that music, I would bet my house is different than the relationship we had with the music.
Right.
I think it is.
We had a connection to it in a way that you had to really invest your time in it. It wasn't like a lighting a candle that's in the background that you can kind of smell, and it's just off in the distance, and it's kind of there, but you're not aware of it. Really, you're not that connected to it. You're maybe off doing something. It's like a light soundtrack to your lives. Back in the day, you would put the record on the turntable and sit down with headphones, or maybe not, but reading the liner notes, looking at the gatefold sleeve, and just being transported. But you were consuming the album as a book rather than just a la carte. Imagine today taking a Herman Melville book and just ripping out chapters 3, 17, and 19. It's like you need the whole thing to make
Well, I'll
sense.
tell you an interesting story about that. One of the first things that happened when I got to LA is I got signed by a label called Emergent Records, which like many labels went under, but it was a real record deal, which was kind of amazing, and because I wasn't a kid, with a nice budget and a whole team, and so what they wanted me to do was the catch of the record was going to be that we were making it in the old school way, and that I was using all these different players, on all the songs. And I had Robin Ford and Eric Johnson and John Oates and Paul Barrere, and every song had different Buzzy Featon. It was like a, you know, Ben Montench and Steve Ferroni, and so they loved that, and they, it wasn't a gimmick. That's who I wanted to play on the record, but that was going to be their sort of promotional, tool to this is what this record's about. So they had a young marketing team, all in their 20s. They had the older guys in the marketing, but then they had the young ones because they wanted to know how kids found out about things, and they knew social media was in its infancy in a way. This would have been 2007 maybe, but it was happening and spreading, and so they brought the young team in. It's about four, like two girls, two guys, to watch a session. And I remember Leland was on that session. I think Ferroni, Benmont. Yeah, I forget who. It doesn't matter. So they watched the session, and then the musicians went home, and then so that so we're sitting with me and the record company guys, the A&R guys, and the guys my age, and the kids, and we're talking about what just happened and who the guys were, and explaining it to the young team, what they played on, and someone mentioned some record that Leland played some, and one of the guys went, "Oh, that's one of the records that I wore out. I'd listened to like twice." And one of the kids who's in the music business, deciding to be in the music, said, "You mean you guys used to listen to records all the way through?"
Yeah.
So that was, we all just like, it was mind-boggling. He'd never done that. He's working for a record company. He'd never listened to a record.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't even that uncommon for disc jockeys to play a side of a record because they needed to go to the bathroom. But
Yeah.
they would pick ones that they liked, obviously. So even on the radio, you might hear songs from the Wood by Jethro Tull, the whole side of it, or you might hear Tapestry, the whole side of it. Yeah,
Well, those days are gone, and that's to me not great. The attention span of your average is 20 seconds. I mean, I don't like it. I think it's contributed to the political unrest. It contributes to the great acrimony and divides in our culture. I think it all goes together.
yeah. But any projects that are near and dear to you that are coming up on the horizon that
Yeah, well, we're going to continue. I'd be probably, if you know what I've been doing, I put together, well, David Crosby and James Raymond and I had started a project with a new band, and we were going to go out on tour and all this stuff.
wow.
And then 3 weeks before the first show, David passed away.
Yeah,
And so we did a tribute, not just to David, but to that music with that band, because the band never got to play the show, and we
yeah,
put in all this time. So just about 2 months ago, and it was a wonderful success. And we had a bunch of guest artists: Sean Colvin and Richard Page and Colin Hay and Chris
um,
Stills. But well, Chris was in the band actually with Crosby. We've been approached to continue doing it,
oh nice.
so I'm excited about that. That we'll carry on that tradition with all people who played with some form of Crosby, Stills and Nash, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, or 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 one of them, or it's everybody connected. That's so it's not just, we're not like per se a cover band. We played this music with the people, and so that's I'm excited about that taking off and touring with that. Of
Yeah,
course, the immediate family. We have new record, new movie, new tour. That's a new video we're going to make. So we have all that happening.
yeah,
Uh, and then I, have my solo work, which uh, I mean, always enjoyed, but still do, you know.
yeah,
Um, and all kinds of things. I have a band called Night Train Music Club, which is sort of just a fun. Uh, it's a it's a rotating group of all these guys, and we just get together and play mostly cover songs and just have a great time. And I'm gonna John Densmore. We're gonna continue. We had such a great time making this movie score that we're
yeah,
gonna we're gonna create some music based on what the three of us did.
yeah. Yeah, I've seen some posts of John recently, and it looks like he's doing really well. That's awesome. With the David Crosby, the last couple of recordings, I just absolutely adored. I just that was just I don't think I fully anticipated how great James's contribution to those were. I was like, oh my God, he is what a treasure.
Magnificent talent. and we got to write a couple songs with David for the records, and that was great. And would have written more. Yeah, I love, and James and I have a great connection. We're doing a trio show in Georgia, in Savannah, Georgia, in a month, I think, with me and James and Jeff Pivar.
Yeah, I interviewed Jeff. He's a couple months ago for this podcast, and what a delight! Just so
Yes, so the three of us are doing, which is kind of funny because they had CPR.
yes, yeah, yeah,
But yeah, so look, I just want to keep doing it as long as I
yeah,
can.
absolutely.
New things will keep coming up and popping up, and I just did this really big benefit that Kevin Costner hosted and played with John Fogerty and Alan Holsworth and all these different artists and Elliot Easton and so on and so forth and Maroon 5 and got to meet Paul McCartney, which was great at the
Yeah,
rehearsal.
yeah, what a thrill, you know.
So and that's the other thing is it's for some people it's not for them because it's completely a crapshoot. Like I don't know, in 6 months, I have no idea what I'll be doing.
Yeah,
Something that I haven't even heard of yet.
yeah. It's enjoy every sandwich.
Yeah. So, but that makes it fun.
Yeah,
I mean, none of the things that have come my way are things that 6 months before I planned. Immediate family, none of us were thinking about that. The David Crosby band, I didn't think he was going to even play again, let alone say, "Hey, Steve, you learn my parts, let's make a band." Any of it, the Broadway shows, I wasn't planning to play Broadway. It just sort of happened.
yeah,
So, so that's been again something that is an experience which less and less young musicians are going to have,
right.
where there's opportunities all over the place, and you know,
The for me, I'm just endlessly fascinated. Besides being a professional musician, I'm just endlessly curious and interested in the history of music and everything that. So it's a real treat to, and thank you for spending your time this afternoon talking about this kind of stuff. Because to me, it's just a wonderful. I always encourage my students to get into reading biographies and get your hand on anything that anything that moves you, and just try to find out about the musicians that were involved, because through meeting you, I'm sure there's going to be things that I'm going to little off ramps that I'm going to check out and like, oh man, that's amazing. And it's just staying connected to it, and but especially the history of it. It's very exciting to
well, one of the things I really do love about our current sort of media content world is what's available if you're curious.
right,
So, you know, YouTube, which can be deadening and mind numbing, can also be the greatest teacher we've ever had.
right,
And I use it a lot when I do workshops and when I teach. Like I had someone in who comes in. He's actually went from a student to working, which is great. He's on a cruise now and making money, and I will take. I'll go to YouTube and I'll take like five singers or five guitarists who are very different. Like the last one I showed him, Otis Redding and Bad Company, and just four amazing singers who get. And I said, I just played them. I said, what do they have in common? And we talk about what it is that reached in that they were doing, and but the ability to just go to YouTube and find that stuff
oh yeah,
is incredible. And I do it all the time. Like I'm always listening to stuff on YouTube. Always. I use it. It's my new record collection, really.
yeah, yeah, because you can find anything, and it is a great teaching aid. I had a student that was brought in a Journey song, and was saying how much they love Journey, and specifically Steve Perry. And I just said offhandedly, yeah, he certainly owes a lot to Sam Cooke. in terms of his singing style. And they were like, "Who's Sam Cooke?"
Right.
At that point, you can play something, and it's like, "Oh my gosh!" And they totally will hear that in a different, and not in a bad way, but it's good to know what the roots are of something.
Absolutely. So if you're curious, if you're a curious person right now and you want to absorb art of any kind, it's
Yeah,
out, it's there. It's a fingertips away for everybody. And that's a good thing. And
yeah,
I hope that'll save a culture that's very fractured and kind of shallow compared to what it once was.
yeah, yeah. To be able to unearth these lost video things of some great jazz musicians, or just somebody just happened to have a camera in the audience of a seminal show that you'd only heard about. It's like, oh my gosh. Or if there were pictures or video, or if there was video that surfaced of the Garrick Theater shows where Frank was in 68 or whatever, that would be amazing to see. Just because I've only got my imagination and a couple grainy black and white photos to refer to in my mind.
Right, right. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. And it goes way back. I mean, you know, it, you can see Oscar Peterson when he was young.
Yeah,
You can see it and hear it. Like, wow, you know. And so I wish that that's what young people were doing as opposed to whatever the hell they're looking at.
right. Yeah. Well,
And some of them are, some of them are.
yeah. Well, I this kind of came up at the last minute, and I just thank you for being so open and warm and generous with your time. And this has been a wonderful conversation. I appreciate every bit of it.
And we didn't even really talk about guitars. So there you go.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't typically have a list of questions just because I feel like that might impede somebody's uh, interesting, because it went. I'm glad we didn't talk about specifically guitars and fretboard radius and wound pickups and what five-way switches and all that kind of stuff. It's nice every once in a while, but I like the humanity of it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. As a matter of fact, I don't know about that shit anyway.
Yeah,
I
neither do
know
I.
I know what I like. I know what feels good. I know what sounds good. I leave all that stuff to the guys who take care of my instruments.
There you go. Well, thank you so much, Steve. Look forward to seeing the movie, and I'm sure everybody's going to really enjoy this episode.
Thank you very much. And the film is really a lot of fun.
Yeah,
It really is. All
great.
right, man. Great to meet you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Meet you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Guitar Hang Podcast, interviews with noteworthy guitar players from around the world. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications to stay updated on our latest episodes.